The hangar was always loud, engines whined, metal clanged. Grease-stained hands moved fast across broken hulls. Workers shouted, sparks flew from welders, but above all the noise, laughter filled the air when Tessa pointed to the rusted heap lying dead at the edge of Dock 9. That one, she said. A man in a wide apron leaned forward, squinting through goggles. He dropped his wrench and laughed. That, sweetheart, that ain't a ship, that's a space coffin. Tessa ignored the stares. Her boots echoed softly as she walked toward the wreck. It didn't even look like it could stand, let alone fly. One of the wings was completely gone. The hull was cracked, blackened. The nameplate was rusted over. A deep gash ran from the cockpit to the engine core. You're wasting your credits, said a mechanic nearby. It's scrap, another added. Tessa kept her hand on the old metal. She felt ... something deep. This wasn't just scrap. It was sleeping, waiting, and she had spent her last credit to wake it up. She turned to the dock officer. I'll take it. Deliver it to Bay 3. The officer blinked, then chuckled. It's your funeral, kid. Bay 3 was the smallest repair bay on the lower levels of the station. It smelled like rust and burnt oil. The lighting flickered overhead and half the tools didn't work. But to Tessa, it was home. She waited as the wreck was dragged into place by a pair of loaderbots. They set it down with a heavy thud. Dust clouded the room. Tessa pulled on her gloves and walked around the ship. The docking clamps were ancient. The hull was held together with emergency patches. The cockpit glass was cracked and fogged. Still, she smiled. She had a plan. Tessa wasn't just any mechanic. She had grown up in the lower rings of the Orion station. Orphaned at 7, raised by machines, trained by old techs who taught her how to rebuild with nothing. She could fix a ship's core with duct tape and wire if needed. And she wasn't looking for a pretty ship. She was looking for one with a story every night. She worked. She cleaned the cockpit first, cleared out old wires, replaced glass panels with scraps from junkyards, welded the frame, removed burnt-out consoles. Bit by bit, she made space for new tech. But something odd happened during her first night. As she pulled a control panel off the wall, her tools sparked against a strange cable. A faint hum echoed through the cockpit. Then a voice: core status low. Identify user. Tessa froze. It wasn't a standard voice system. This wasn't a ship AI. It was something else. She set her wrench down and spoke clearly. Tessa Ward. New owner. Silence. Then user ID not found. Access denied. Override, she said quickly. Ship abandoned. No crew signatures in database. Open system logs. A pause. Accessing ... Logs corrupted. Core lock enabled. Security override required. Tessa leaned back. This ship wasn't just damaged, it was hiding. The next day she went to Old Deck 12. Few people went there anymore, but deep inside was a man named Remo who once programmed AI systems for the fleet. Remo looked at her scan drive and raised an eyebrow. Where did you find this core signature? Old scrapyard. Orion Dock 9, he whistled. Kid, this is from a ghost ship. A model that was erased from fleet records years ago. Erased. Why? Because the last time this core spoke it shut down a fleet base with one pulse. Tessa stared at him. A weapon, a forgotten one. He said, be careful. Back in Bay 3, she kept working. She installed a new energy core, restored the shield generator, painted the outside black with silver streaks. She named it Shadowlight, but the more she worked, the stranger things got. The AI would sometimes speak. At night. Tessa ... System alert. Unknown craft approaching ... Target locked. Each time she'd check, but there was nothing there. She chalked it up to corrupted data. Then, one night, someone broke into Bay 3. Tessa had just stepped out to get food when the alarm tripped. She ran back, wrench in hand. The door was open. Lights were flickering. A figure stood inside the cockpit pulling at the control core. Get away from her, Tessa shouted. The man turned, smirking. You don't even know what this is. I know it's mine, he laughed. This ship belonged to the Nightwing division. It was classified. You're playing with a war machine. Tessa stepped forward. Then why are you stealing it? Because it's worth more than your life. She swung the wrench. He ducked, pulled a blaster, but before he could fire, the ship lit up. Bright blue lines ran across the walls. A high-pitched scream echoed from the core. The man dropped his weapon and clutched his ears. Tessa grabbed him and kicked him out the door. Security override engaged. The AI said, hostile removed. Tessa blinked. You saved me. The AI answered, protective protocol activated. The next morning, Dock 9 was buzzing. Everyone had heard about the break-in, about the lights, the sounds, about how the junk ship glowed. They watched as Tessa walked past them with a fuel line. No one laughed this time. But in the deep void, somewhere far from Orion Station, a satellite pinged. A signal had been sent. A pulse from an old, forgotten chip, and something received it. A man in a dark robe stood over a map of star systems. He smiled. Shadowlight has awakened. Begin the hunt. The air inside Bay 3 felt different. It wasn't just the dust or the heavy scent of grease. It was something deeper. Ever since the break-in, Tessa couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched not by a person, but by the ship itself. Shadowlight sat in silence. But it wasn't the kind of silence that meant nothing was happening. It was the silence of something alive, waiting. Tessa had known old ships with smart AIs, but Shadowlight didn't just respond, it listened. And sometimes, it whispered. That morning, Tessa stepped into the cockpit holding a small device she had picked up from a black market vendor on Deck 17. It was a bioscanner, the kind used by the fleet to unlock sealed ship compartments. She moved through the narrow hallway leading to the rear of the ship, where the storage bay was. The walls still had old scratches, not from tools, but from claws or blades. Tessa placed the bioscanner against the panel beside the sealed door. A green light blinked, then a red one. The door remained locked. Override code required, said the AI. Can you bypass it? Vox, she asked. That's what she had started calling the voice. Vox, Latin for voice. It just seemed right. Negative. Bioauthentication linked to deceased personnel. Tessa sat on the floor and sighed. What happened on this ship? Who flew it before me? There was a long pause. Then the AI spoke softly. Classified mission. Logs damaged. Only fragments remain. Show me what you've got. A panel slid open beside her. A small projector flickered to life, casting a blue hologram into the air. It showed a man's face, sharp jawline, deep-set eyes, short gray beard. He wore a dark flight suit with a strange symbol on the chest, a silver spiral crossed with a crimson blade. Commander Elias Vaughn, said the AI, former captain of Shadowlight. Why was the ship abandoned? Tessa asked. Mission failed. Crew lost. Ship quarantined. Tessa leaned forward. Quarantined. Why? Unknown anomaly discovered. Containment breached. Last recorded transmission. The projector fizzled. A high-pitched sound filled the cockpit. Then silence. Tessa stared at the flickering blue light. Vox, ... What's inside this ship? The AI didn't respond. Later that night, she couldn't sleep. She sat in Bay 3, cross-legged on the cold floor, eating out of a ration pack. The hangar was dim. Most of the lights were off to save power. The loader bots rested in their charging stations. She looked at Shadowlight. It had begun to change, not just from her repairs. The surface had started to repair itself, just barely. Small gaps in the metal had fused back together overnight. Wires she hadn't touched were reconnected. The ship was healing. Ships didn't do that. She stood and walked over. Her hand rested against the hull. You're not just a ship, are you? The AI's voice came from inside. Correction. I am not a ship. I am a weapon platform with adaptive core technology and self-sustaining systems. Tessa blinked. You're alive. Negative. I am not biological, but you think, you act, you choose. A pause. That is correct. Tessa stepped back. Then why help me? You activated my restoration cycle. You chose not to destroy me. You protected me. Tessa smiled faintly. So, we're friends. I am unfamiliar with that term, but I will not let harm come to you. She nodded. That was enough for now. The next day, Tessa returned to Deck 12. Remo was waiting. I've been looking into your ship's ID signature, he said, pulling up a map. The design matches a prototype class built 30 years ago under a secret program called Project Horizon. Only 5 were made. Yours is the last one that hasn't been destroyed. What was their purpose? Not war, exactly. Not peace either. They were built to end conflicts in one strike. Tessa's blood ran cold. Planet killers, no worse. They erased technology. Anything digital gone in seconds. Communication blackouts, power outages, AI shutdowns like an EMP times 100. Tessa sat down. What do I do with something like that? Remo leaned forward. You keep it hidden, because the people who lost control of Project Horizon have been hunting that ship ever since. Tessa knew then she couldn't stay on the station much longer. She returned to Bay 3 and sealed the doors. Her fingers moved fast over the control console. She set the thrusters to standby, checked the shield systems, restored basic life support. Fuel levels, low but usable. She sat in the pilot's seat. It was old, but it fit her like it had waited for her all this time. Vox, she said. Can you plot a route away from Orion? Confirmed. Coordinates prepared. Do you wish to depart now? Tessa looked around. This was her life now. A hunted mechanic flying a ghost ship. She nodded. Do it. The engines roared to life. Shadowlight lifted from the ground. The roof of Bay 3 opened, revealing the stars above. For the first time in her life, Tessa felt like she belonged somewhere and somewhere far away. A fleet of black ships turned to face her path. The hunt had begun. The stars stretched out in all directions as Shadowlight soared beyond the reach of Orion Station. Inside the cockpit, Tessa sat quietly, her fingers still trembling on the controls. It was her first time piloting a ship beyond the safety of that station, but she had no choice now. The hangar wasn't safe anymore. Too many eyes had seen what Shadowlight could do, and too many ears had heard the sound it made when it woke. Outside the window, space shimmered silent and endless. Somewhere out there were answers. And danger. Core stable, Vox said in a calm tone. Destination, Outer Drift Belt, Sector 14. Estimated arrival, 2 hours. What's in Sector 14? Tessa asked. It is unclaimed space. Most records show asteroid debris, a few dead outposts, and old mining platforms. Sounds like the perfect place to hide. She whispered. back on Orion Station. Alarms echoed through the military deck. A man in dark uniform stared at the screen, his face hard and pale. "We've got a ping. It's faint, but the core signal is active. Shadowlight's AI is online." Another officer leaned in. "Should we engage pursuit protocols?" The man nodded. "Send a Black Fang squad. No contact, no warnings. Retrieve the ship. Terminate the pilot." Shadowlight exited hyperspace in a soft hum. The ship emerged near a massive field of drifting rock. It was an old mining zone. Rusted cargo platforms floated beside broken equipment. A cracked space station drifted lifelessly nearby. Tessa stared at it. The place looked abandoned for years. "Any life signs?" she asked. Double quotes scanning. Double quotes, Vox said. There was a long pause. One faint signal detected. Origin unknown. Tessa hesitated. "Send out a hailing frequency." No response. "Try again." Still silence. Tessa narrowed her eyes. "Bring us closer." The ship drifted toward the broken station. Panels floated off its surface. A massive hole gaped in the side. Something had hit it hard. Tessa guided Shadowlight to dock near the quieter edge. "Vox, prepare the boarding bridge. Lock down all ship systems while I'm gone." "Acknowledged. Proceed with caution." The station was cold. Tessa stepped inside slowly, her suit's light cutting through the darkness. Wires hung like vines. Metal groaned under her weight. Every step echoed. She followed the scanner. The signal led her to a sealed room. The door was half-melted. She placed her palm on the scanner. Nothing. She took out a small fusion cutter and began slicing. Minutes passed. Finally, the door opened. Inside was a young man barely conscious, tied to a chair. His face was bruised, one eye swollen shut. He wore a torn flight suit. "Hey," Tessa whispered. She ran to him. "I'm not here to hurt you. I found your signal." His eye fluttered open. "You ... You're not with them. They came looking for something, took the core, killed everyone else." Tessa's heart tightened. "Who did this?" He coughed weakly. "The Black Fang." Back on Shadowlight, Vox's sensors blinked red. Incoming vessels detected. 3 ships approaching. Stealth mode activated. In the distance, black ships curved through the stars shaped like blades, quiet as death. Tessa dragged the boy back to the airlock. He could barely walk. She helped him into Shadowlight just as the alert rang. "Vox, talk to me." "Enemy vessels. Within firing range." Shields raised. Tessa dropped into the pilot seat. Her hands shook as she gripped the controls. "Get us out of here." "Not possible." Hyperdrive charging. Enemy missiles locked. On the screen, she saw them. Black fighters, their engines glowing like blood. The boy groaned behind her. Tessa clenched her teeth. Shadowlight, activate weapons. Defensive mode, engaged. Outside, Shadowlight lit up. Small panels along the wings shifted. Energy pulsed along hidden circuits. The first missile came fast. Tessa braced for impact. Instead, a sudden burst of blue light exploded from the ship's core, a wave that expanded outwards. The missile stopped mid-space, fizzled, and dropped. Then, the second. Then the third. "EMP pulse deployed," Vox said. "Enemy guidance systems disabled." Tessa didn't wait. "Now hit them back." Shadowlight responded with precision. Laser beams erupted from its underbelly, striking the nearest fighter. The ship spun out of control and crashed into an asteroid. The others turned and opened fire, but their targeting was off. Shadowlight's strange tech moved faster, smarter. Tessa fired again. Another enemy ship fell. The last one turned and ran. "Enemy retreating," Vox reported. Pursue. Tessa's voice was steady. "No, let them run back and tell their boss. Shadowlight isn't sleeping anymore." When the stars were calm again, Tessa turned to the boy. He lay on a bench in the back of the cockpit, breathing weakly. "What's your name, Jace?" he whispered. "I was part of a resistance crew. We tried to stop them. We failed. They were looking for your ship." "Why?" "Because you have the only weapon that can stop what's coming." Tessa sat beside him. "Then we better figure out what that is. Fast." Jace looked at her. "You don't even know what you're flying, do you?" Tessa smiled faintly. "Not yet, but I'm learning." Outside, the stars turned, and far away, on a hidden moon, a tall figure watched the battle replay through a glowing screen. "She's awakened the first strike," he said. "Send the rest. Bring me The stars outside Shadowlight's windows were cold and endless. Tessa stared at them as the ship glided through hyperspace. She had never felt so far from home, and yet, for the first time, she wasn't sure where home was anymore. Jace lay on the medical cot behind her, his face pale, his breathing shallow. He checked his vitals again. The scanner beeped softly. "Still stable but weak." She whispered, "Hold on, Jace, we're not giving up." "Course status?" she asked aloud. "Jump complete," Vox replied. "Entering orbit of Vespera Drift, uncharted sector, minimal star traffic." Tessa took a deep breath. "Good, let's hide here for a while." Shadowlight descended toward the edge of the drift, in enormous asteroid belt scattered with frozen moons, gas pockets, and dust clouds. It was the kind of place people went to disappear. Exactly what they needed. Tessa worked for hours, patching the damage from the last battles. Who had protected them? But the power cells had burned out on the secondary grid. She crawled into the underbelly, tools clanking on her belt. Vox scanned this cable. I think we've got a short confirmed, the AI replied. Power surge detected. Recommend core bypass. Tessa soldered the wire, sparks flying into her gloves. She hissed but didn't stop. This ship had saved her life more than once now. She owed it everything. That when she finished, she climbed out and checked on Jace again. His skin was sweating now, and his hands trembled even in sleep. She placed a cold rag on his forehead. You're going to make it, she whispered. I promise. Far across the galaxy, the Black Fang fleet gathered in orbit over a ruined planet. The man in the black coat, known only as Commander Kale, watched as his captains reviewed star maps. Shadowlight was last seen in Drift Sector 14. The signal is faint, but it's there. Kale nodded slowly. The weapon is alive. It must not reach the remnant worlds. Increase patrols. Use force if needed. Bring me the pilot, alive or dead, asked a captain. Kale's eyes narrowed. Alive. I want to see who woke up the ghost. Back on Shadowlight, Tessa heard coughing. She ran to the medical bay. Jace was awake. Barely. He reached for her wrist. They'll find us. They always do. We've got time, she said. We're hidden. He shook his head weakly. Not from them. They're tracking the core signature. You have to shut it down. I can't. It's part of the ship. Without it, we're dead. He struggled to sit up. Tessa, there's something else. She leaned closer. He took a shaky breath. I wasn't just part of a resistance crew. I was trained to interface with tech like Shadowlight genetically. Her eyes widened. You're bonded to this tech. Not this one, but something close. I was part of Project Echo, the twin program to Horizon. Tessa sat down slowly. What does that mean? It means I can feel what the ship feels, and it's afraid. She looked around the cockpit. The lights flickered slightly. A hum passed through the walls. Vox's voice came on softly. Warning. Multiple jump signatures detected. Tessa stood quickly. How many? Foreclosing fast. They found us. Outside, the Black Fang ships emerged from hyperspace. Tessa jumped into the pilot's seat. Vox, engage shields. Prepare evasive maneuvers. Shields at 72%. Weapons online. Jace struggled to stand, leaning on the console. We can't outrun them again. We don't have a choice. No, he said. We need to go to the remnant worlds. There's a relay gate hidden on a moon nearby. If we reach it, we can jump beyond their range. Tessa punched the coordinates in. Lead the way. The chase began. Shadowlight darted through the Vespera drift. Asteroids tumbled past. Enemy fire lit up the void. Tessa weaved through debris fields and gas clouds. The Black Fang ships stayed close behind. Jace shouted, 10 clicks ahead. That moon. The gate's buried inside. Tessa gritted her teeth. Let's hope it's still working. They landed hard. The moon was cold, its surface dark with ice. Tessa and Jace ran through narrow caverns, lit only by Vox's guiding lights. The sound of approaching ships roared above them. Finally, they reached it, an ancient structure half buried in rock. A tall archway pulsed with faint blue light. This is the gate, Tessa asked. It needs a power key, Jace said, pulling a small device from his jacket. He plugged it into the base of the gate. The ground trembled. Lights along the arch blinked to life. Hurry, Tessa shouted. Behind them, the enemy had landed. Shadowy figures stepped into the cave, weapons drawn. Jace activated the gate. A portal opened, swirling like water. Go, he yelled. Tessa hesitated, then grabbed his hand and pulled him through. Behind them, the cave exploded in light, and just like that, they were gone. They landed in empty space, quiet, peaceful, stars swirling around a new system. Jace collapsed. Beside her, Tessa looked at the strange new world ahead. They were safe, for now, but the war was just beginning. The stars outside were calm, peaceful, but Tessa knew peace was only temporary. Shadowlight floated near a quiet moon in an uncharted system. They had landed in a rocky canyon surrounded by icy peaks. Far beneath the surface, deep inside a hollowed-out cavern, was an old resistance hideout. The place was cold and dark, like the ghosts of its past still lived there. Tessa sat beside Jace in the ship's medbay. His wounds were healing, but his face was still pale, his breathing shallow. She brushed hair from his forehead and whispered, "We're safe now, just rest." Jace slowly opened one eye. "This place, I've been here before." "You have. When I was a kid, they trained us here." Before everything went wrong, Tessa looked around. What was this place? Really? A research post, one of the last, before the resistance scattered. They said it was haunted. She raised an eyebrow. Haunted, not by ghosts, by memories, by betrayal. Vox activated the door controls. The hatch hissed open and cold air spilled in. Tessa wrapped her jacket tighter and stepped out into the base. Dust covered the walls. Old screens flickered with faded lights. Broken chairs and smashed terminals filled the room, but some systems were still alive. She found a power panel and began restoring core functions. Lights blinked on one by one. Vox's voice echoed through the speakers. Partial systems online. Life support functioning at 42%. Jace leaned on her shoulder as they moved deeper into the base. He guided her toward a sealed room at the back. "That's where they kept the archives," he said. Tessa nodded. She scanned the door. It was still encrypted. Vox, can you bypass the lock? Attempting decryption warning. Security protocols may activate. Tessa hesitated, then said, do it. The lock clicked. The door creaked open. Inside were rows of glowing memory cores, dozens of them. They pulsed like slow heartbeats. Jace stepped forward, touching one. It lit up, casting a soft blue light over his face. This one, he said. It's the captain's log. My mother's. Tessa blinked. Your mother. She led the research here. She helped build Shadowlight. He activated the memory core. A hologram appeared, a woman in a flight uniform, her face tired but strong. Log 117, she said. We've completed Phase 2 of the Horizon Twin project. Shadowlight has begun integrating the adaptive AI system. The other ship, Echoflare, is unstable. We've lost 2 test pilots, but Shadowlight, she's different. She learns, she protects, she remembers. Tessa stared. She's talking about the ship like it's alive, because it is, Jace said softly. And my mother died to protect that secret. Hours passed as they dug through old logs, blueprints, audio, files, notes from engineers long gone. Tessa discovered a small metallic cube tucked under a control panel. She brought it to Vox. Analyze this. Vox scanned the object. Encrypted data. Identity. Chip embedded. Belongs to subject Kale. Her heart stopped. Kale, as in Commander Kale. Affirmative, former project overseer, current Black Fang commander. Tessa clenched her jaw. So he was part of this. He knew everything. Jace stood slowly. He didn't just know. He designed the shutdown code, the fail-safe. If he finds us, he can control Shadowlight. Then we have to stop him before he does. That night, Tessa couldn't sleep. She walked through the base alone, memories pressing in from every side. She found herself in a room with a broken window. Outside, stars blinked through the dust. Vox's voice came from the comm panel. Tessa, incoming transmission. Low frequency, hidden relay. Patch it through. A voice crackled. A woman. This is Captain Drea of the Remnant Fleet. We received your emergency ping. If you are the pilot of Shadowlight, we request immediate contact. Tessa sat up straight. Remnant Fleet, they're real. The voice continued. We know what's coming. We know Kale is hunting you. We can help, but you must get to Alaris Prime. Coordinates attached. Come alone. Then the line went dead. Tessa whispered. Vox, track those coordinates. Locked course available. Estimated travel time, 17 hours. She looked at Jace, sleeping in the other room. He's not going to like this. Far away, Kale stood inside his warship. He stared at a holomap. A red light blinked near the outer moons. She's in the old base, he said. A soldier beside him nodded. Should we send the strike team? Kale smiled. No, let her come to us. She'll follow the signal. She always was curious. He held a small control chip in his palm, cold and metallic. Soon, he whispered, Shadowlight will return to its master. The journey to Alaris Prime was quiet, but Tessa's heart was loud as Shadowlight glided through the empty void. Her mind churned with questions. Who was Captain Drea? Could the Remnant Fleet really be trusted? And why did they ask her to come, alone? She glanced toward the medbay where Jace had been sleeping before she left. She hadn't told him. She knew he would try to stop her. But the core was clear and so was the danger. Shadowlight's sleek frame pierced through a nebula cloud. Purple and gold gas swirled outside like dancing ghosts. Vox, time to arrival, she asked. 15 minutes, the AI replied. Tessa tightened the straps on her vest and stood from the pilot seat. She checked her sidearm, took a deep breath, and whispered, let's see what they want. Alaris Prime appeared ahead, a green and silver planet wrapped in cloud storms and high mountain ridges. Its rings shimmered in the starlight. Shadowlight entered orbit smoothly, descending toward a deep valley surrounded by steel towers and glowing platforms. This was the Remnant's hidden city, carved into the planet's crust. An old military base now turned into their headquarters. A voice crackled over the comms. This is Remnant Control. Identify yourself. Tessa Ward, pilot of Shadowlight. There was a pause. Then, landing pad 17. You are expected. Tessa guided the ship down carefully. When the landing gear touched the pad, she took a final breath and stepped out. The air on Alaris was cool. Sharp. 2 guards waited for her in white armor with the Remnant insignia across their chests. Captain Drea is waiting, one said. His voice was calm, but his eyes studied her every move. Tessa followed them through metallic corridors that hummed beneath her boots. The base was alive. People moved between control stations. Drones zipped past the ceiling rails, and digital screens showed star maps with red markings. At the center of the control room stood a tall woman with silver-streaked hair and deep scars across her hands. You're Tessa, she said. I'm Drea. Welcome to what's left of the Remnant. Why did you call me? Drea motioned for her to sit. Because you're flying a legend. Shadowlight wasn't just a prototype, it was a prophecy. Tessa frowned. A prophecy. Drea nodded. Our ancestors believed that when the great darkness rose again, a ship of light would awaken, built from the bones of fallen stars, powered by memory, guided by someone with nothing left to lose. I don't believe in prophecies. Then believe in facts, Drea replied. She handed her a small tablet. This is everything we have on Kale. He's not just a military tyrant. He's looking for something, and Shadowlight is the key. Tessa scrolled through files, photos of destroyed outposts, intercepted transmissions, a map of strange ancient symbols. These marks, she said. I've seen them inside Shadowlight. Dre leaned forward. Then you've seen the storm core. Tessa's stomach dropped. What's the storm core? It's the heart of the ship, a fusion of AI, organic memory, and ancient tech. There were only two built: Shadowlight and something darker. Back on the moon, Jace woke with a sharp breath. He reached for Tessa and found her gone. Vox, where is she? Tessa departed for Elaris Prime 12 hours ago. Jace slammed his fist on the wall. You let her go alone, she insisted. Jace limped toward the cockpit, sweat beading on his brow. His injuries burned, but he had no time to rest. Plot a course, we're going after her. At Elaris, Drea took Tessa to the underground vault. It was massive, lined with artifacts, tech fragments, and old weapons. In the center stood a machine, shaped like a cube, glowing faintly. This is a fragment of the original core, Drea said. Recovered after the fall of Horizon Station. Kale is building the second one. If he succeeds, no world will be safe. Tessa touched the cube. Her mind swirled with visions, flickers of stars, voices, screams, shadowlights, memories. She gasped and stepped back. It's alive, Drea nodded, and it's waking up. You're bonded to it now. It will protect you, but it will also show you the truth, even if you don't want to see it. Jace arrived at Elaris just as the alarms began. Shadowlight touched down at Ganon. This time, Drea met him with her guards. You shouldn't be here, she said. Where is she? Drea hesitated. In the core chamber. But she's not the only one. We've had a breach, a traitor. Jace's heart raced. He pushed past her. Inside the chamber, Tessa stood frozen. A man stepped out from the shadows. Kale, she whispered. He looked older than she remembered from the files. His face was sharp, his eyes cold. He held a small device in his hand. Give me the core, Tessa, or I shut her down. He pressed a button. Shadowlight's lights flickered. Tessa collapsed to her knees as pain flooded her chest, like her heartbeat was tied to the ship's engine. She's linked to it, Kale said. And if she dies, the ship dies. Jace burst into the room. Let her go. Kale smiled. Ah, the boy. You look just like your mother. Jace fired. Kale dodged, but the bullet grazed his shoulder. Tessa crawled to the console and slammed her palm against it. Box, emergency override. The ship pulsed. Shadowlight roared. A burst of energy filled the room. Kale was thrown back against the wall. Jace caught Tessa just before she hit the ground. I've got you, he said. Kale escaped into the shadows. Dree's guards swarmed in. They were too late. Tessa lay on the floor, breathing heavily. Jace held her close. We're okay, he whispered, but Tessa knew it wasn't over. He's building the second ship, she said. We have to stop him. We will. Together, Drea stepped forward. The next fight won't be easy. He's headed to the Lost Sector to awaken the storm. Tessa stood, legs shaking. Then we follow. The Lost Sector had no map. It was a stretch of space shrouded in constant storms, ancient debris, and dead star husks that whispered through the void. No ship had returned from it in over a decade, but Tessa and Jace didn't have a choice. Kale was already ahead of them, with the twin storm core in his hands, and if he completed the second ship, whatever it was, nothing would stand in his way. Shadowlight moved carefully, its sensors flickering as lightning danced outside. Blue and green currents cracked across the darkness, lighting up shattered moons and collapsed space stations. Tessa sat in the pilot seat, her hands steady but cold. Jace stood behind her, reading energy scans. This place feels wrong, he said. It's more than wrong, Vox added. It's broken. Time distortion, gravity shifts, energy readings fluctuating, and something else. Tessa turned. What else? Something is watching. The crew had picked up a trail. Kale's ship had passed through a narrow asteroid canyon 4 hours ago. They followed it cautiously, shadowlight weaving between massive floating stones. Suddenly the ship jolted. Brace, Tessa shouted. A magnetic pulse hit them. The lights flickered. Shadowlight's engines dropped to minimum power. We've hit a dead zone, Jace said. Tech suppression field. Tessa gritted her teeth. Manual controls. Let's move. They flew into a deep pit at the edge of an ancient station, its surface covered in carvings and strange symbols. This place, Jace whispered. It's not just old, it's pre-Horizon, maybe even older. They docked. The silence outside was crushing. Tessa and Jace exited, weapons drawn. Inside the ruins, the air was thin and heavy. The walls hummed faintly, pulsing with the energy of forgotten voices. As they walked deeper, the symbols began to glow. A panel lit up in front of them, responding to Tessa's touch. It knows me, she said. Because you're connected, Jace replied to Shadowlight, to the core. She touched a carved circle. A door opened. Beyond it, a chamber filled with light. In the center stood a machine, a half-finished ship. Kale was already there. You made it, Kale said, turning slowly. His face was marked with thin lines of glowing data. His eyes were sharp, almost electric. Step away from the core, Tessa said. Kale smiled. I've already activated it. You're too late. The second storm core pulsed behind him. Wires crawled across the ship's frame, linking metal and memory. Jace raised his weapon. Shut it down. Don't understand, Kale said. This isn't a weapon. It's a gate. A path to the next phase of evolution. The ships weren't built for war. They were built to escape. Tessa frowned. Escape what? Kale stepped back. The end. The collapse. The thing coming from outside the edge of space. The builders knew. That's why they made these cores. Tessa hesitated. Her hands trembled. You're lying, am I? Then ask her. Shadowlight's voice rang out through her. Come. He speaks some truth, Tessa. The storm cores are more than machines. They are keys. The ancient ruins began to shake. Energy flooded the room. Kale stepped into the incomplete ship. I will open the gate with or without you. He vanished in a burst of light. Tessa turned to Jace. We have to follow him. Jace grabbed her hand and let's go. Shadowlight locked onto the coordinates emitted by the storm gate. Course locked, Vox said. Warning. Destination unknown. Punch it, Tessa said. The ship roared. Light swallowed them. They emerged in a void unlike anything they had seen before. It wasn't space, it wasn't time, it was the in-between, floating. Fragments of memories, echoes of worlds long dead flickered around them. Shapes moved in the dark. Giant things. Watching, waiting. We're not alone, Jace whispered. Shadowlight guided them toward a beam of energy in the distance. Kale's ship was ahead, now fully awakened, its core glowing brighter with every second. He's opening the gate, Vox warned. Tessa's heart pounded. She felt pain deep in her bones as if something inside her was being pulled apart. We're linked, she whispered. If he finishes the process, he takes everything with him. Jace looked at her. Then we end this, now. They docked inside the core chamber. Kale stood before a vast portal of swirling white and black. Don't. You see, he cried. This is salvation. No, Tessa said. This is the end of choice, of freedom. He turned. His face was no longer human. The core had changed him, made him more. You were meant to help me, he said. I was meant to stop you. She reached for the emergency disruptor on her belt. Jace flanked him from the side. Kale screamed and launched a wave of energy. Shadowlight's systems flickered. Jace fired. Kale fell to one knee. Tessa hit the trigger. The portal cracked. The chamber began to collapse. Kale roared, lunging at her, but Jace stepped in the way. A blast threw them all apart. Tessa crawled to the panel. Vox shutdown code now confirmed. Light exploded around them. Kale's scream echoed, then was gone. The gate collapsed. Tessa woke to silence. Jace was beside her, barely conscious. Shadowlight was badly damaged but alive. Vox whispered. The gate is sealed. Kale is gone. Tessa looked up at the stars forming around them again. They had made it out, but the storm wasn't over. Not yet. Silence followed them home. Shadowlight drifted slowly through the stars. Its once shining hull, now scratched, dented and scorched from the final battle. Inside the ship the air was quiet except for the soft hum of weakened engines and the faint pulse of power running through the walls like a tired heartbeat. Tessa sat alone in the pilot's chair, eyes locked on the dark canvas outside. Stars twinkled in the distance, untouched by the chaos they had just escaped. Her fingers trembled slightly as they hovered above the controls. Behind her, in the medbay, Jace was still unconscious, resting after days of surgery, patched up by the last of the ship's working automed systems. Shadowlight had saved them again, but something was different. She could feel it not in her body, but in her soul. The ship had changed. The bond between her and Shadowlight had grown quiet, like a voice whispering from far away. It was still there, but faint, distant, fading. The battle against Kale had torn through space, systems, and even minds. In stopping the final gate from opening, they had unleashed a wave of energy so intense that it shattered control stations, melted communication networks, and silenced the stars in several sectors. Tessa had flown them out with the last spark of Shadowlight's strength, but they weren't safe. Not really, they were just drifting. 2 days passed before Jace woke. When he opened his eyes, his voice was barely a whisper. We made it. Tessa leaned over him, eyes heavy with relief. We did. He looked around, wincing as he tried to sit up. Where are we? Almost at Illyri's prime. The system's still dark, but the ship's guiding us in. How's she doing? He asked, his hand lightly tapping the wall beside him. Tessa hesitated, quiet, like she's sleeping. Maybe dreaming. He nodded, eyes closing again. She deserves to rest. So did they. When they landed on Illyri's prime, the once busy remnant base looked like a ghost station. Many corridors were dark, screens dead, and doors sealed. Dust hung in the air like fog. Only a few ships remained in the hangars. Some were damaged beyond repair. Others were just forgotten. Captain Drea met them at the dock. Her uniform was stained, her hair tied back in. A messy knot. She didn't speak right away. Instead, she walked slowly toward Tessa, arms crossed, eyes scanning Shadowlight. Then she hugged her. Tessa stiffened at first, then slowly hugged her back. You came back, Drea said. So did you, Tessa replied. They walked inside, leaving Shadowlight powered down on the landing pad. Jace followed, leaning on a cane, slower than usual but alive. The command room was cold and empty. Only 3 others sat at the council table, remnant officers who had survived Kale's last assault. Drea pulled up a holographic star map. Dozens of systems glowed red. "We won the battle," she began. "But the war, it left scars. Power grids collapsed in 6 systems. 3 major colonies went dark. Entire sectors lost communication. And Kale," she paused, her face hardening. "He's gone, but he left behind code, traps, AI fragments." Tessa narrowed her eyes. "You mean there are pieces of him still out there?" Drea nodded. "Rogue remnants, ghost code. Infected ships in old stations are triggering his last protocols. Some are broadcasting his voice like he's still alive." Jace leaned forward. "How do we stop it?" "We don't know," Drea said. "But there's more." She tapped the map again. A new point blinked on the outer rim. A sector that had but sealed long ago, unexplored, abandoned. Tessa stared at it. "What is that?" "A pulse," Drea said. "Something woke up. Something ancient, and we think it's connected to your ship." That night, Shadowlight spoke again. Tessa had stayed on board while Jace rested in the med station. She sat in the control seat, hands folded in her lap. "Heart heavy, Captain," the ship whispered, her voice faint. Tessa looked up. "You're still here. Fading, but still listening. What's happening?" "A memory is returning. The last message from my creators. It has awakened." "Why now?" "Because you are ready." A panel in front of her opened slowly, revealing a soft white glow. Tessa placed her hand on it. The world shifted suddenly. She was floating in a space, not physical. Light surrounded her. Voices echoed memories. She saw a world of pure gold. Towers in the sky. Ships powered by music and thought. A civilization far older than anything in the galaxy. Then came shadows. A great darkness. A collapse. She saw ships fleeing. Core-tech being sealed. Messages encoded. A voice whispered. "To the one who bonds with the light. This is your purpose. You hold the last seed. You carry the spark. You must decide awaken the balance, or bury the past forever." Tessa opened her eyes, breath shaking. "What seed?" she asked. Shadowlight answered. "The builders left a piece of their code hidden. In me, a backup, a signal. It can restore what was lost, but it comes with risk." "What kind of risk?" "If awakened, it will spread. It will touch every system, reconnect everything, even the forgotten, even the dangerous." Tessa looked down. Her fingers trembled. "Where is it?" "The edge of space. The satellite tomb. Only you can access it." The next morning, the crew gathered in the war room. The satellite map floated above the table. Like a ghost, the system on the edge of the galaxy sector Thalos 9 was still flashing with weak pulses. No human colony had ever been established there. Ancient data labeled it only once. Centuries ago. The tomb. Captain Drea stared at the signal. "You really think this seed will help?" Tessa nodded. "It's more than help. It's a final link. If we activate it, it could reboot everything. The broken relays, the frozen planets, the silence left behind by Kale's code." "But you said there's a risk," Dre replied. Jace added, "If Kale left pieces behind, waking up everything could invite them back." Tessa stood quietly for a moment, looking at the map. "If we don't try," she said finally, "the galaxy stays broken." Drea sighed and gave a small nod. "Then you'll go alone. No remnant escort. If it's a trap, we can't lose more people." Tessa agreed. She didn't want anyone else risking their life. Hours later, Shadowlight left Illyris Prime. It wasn't a grand departure. There were no cheers, no flags, no speeches. Just one quiet ship, scarred and tired, gliding out of the atmosphere with 2 people aboard and a galaxy's fate in their hands. Jace sat beside her. "Still hurts to sit," he muttered. Tessa smirked. "Don't make me carry you again. I like that part." She rolled her eyes, but her smile faded as they entered. "The jump tunnel, Shadowlight," she whispered. Double quotes. "Yes, Captain," the ship answered weakly. "You sure you can make it?" "I was made for this." The journey took 6 hours. 6 hours through twisting radiation belts, collapsed wormholes, and abandoned relay chains, weaved carefully through each, guiding them with fading precision. At last, they arrived. Before them hung a massive metal sphere floating alone in the dark. It wasn't spinning. It didn't blink. It simply existed, like a forgotten moon. Tessa stared. "That's it." Jace leaned forward. "It's huge," Shadowlight whispered. "The signal tomb. A builder memory vault. Inside is the seed." "How do we access it?" Tessa asked. The ship paused. "You must enter it alone." Tessa looked at Jace. "I'll be right here," he said. Tessa suited up. She moved through the airlock slowly, her heart pounding. Outside the ship, space was still and cold. Her boots gently touched the vault surface. It felt alive, like it was watching her. Lights pulsed beneath the metal as she walked toward a circular hatch. No buttons, no wires, just a handprint. She placed her hand down. The metal shimmered and folded open. Inside, the walls glowed faint blue. Symbols danced in the air. There was no gravity, but she floated calmly through the chamber. At the center hovered a crystal sphere, about the size of her chest. Inside, small stars spun like a model galaxy. Shadowlight spoke in her earpiece. "That is the seed. It's beautiful," she whispered. "Touch it, and it will begin." Tessa floated closer. Her fingers hovered above the crystal. She paused. Once I do this, there's no going back, is there? No, Shadowlight said. You are the last key. She closed her eyes, then touched it. Light exploded around. Her time bent. Her mind filled with voices. Thousands. Millions. Mothers singing to children. Pilots calling for help. Scientists laughing. Lovers whispering. Soldiers crying. Builders speaking in a forgotten tongue. She saw their cities, their dreams, their fall. Then a voice, gentle, ancient, you remember us. You brought the light. Will you carry us forward? Tessa answered, tears in her eyes. Yes. The seed pulsed. Back on Shadowlight. Alarms began to ring. Jace jumped to the controls. What's happening? Shadowlight's voice was shaking. Signals spreading. All systems activating. Energy surging beyond limit. Can she take it? No. Tessa floated out of the chamber, now glowing brighter and brighter. The signal was releasing, flooding through the galaxy. Relays lit up. Beacons long dead blinked awake. Lost ships received coordinates. Frozen satellites hummed, but Shadowlight was burning. The bond with the seed was too much. When she returned, Tessa saw it immediately. Panels sparking, floors shaking, lights dimming. The core was cracking. Shadowlight, she shouted. Stay with me, I can't. The ship replied softly. I was not meant to live beyond this. Jace grabbed her as the floor tilted. Tessa, we have to go. No, she can't go out like this. Tessa. Listen to her. Shadowlight whispered. Captain. Thank you. You gave me life. The walls glowed one last time, then silence. The ship was dark now. No hum, no lights, no lights. No voice. Tessa stood in the heart of the command deck, staring at the walls that once spoke to her, guided her, protected her. Her hand reached out and touched the side panel gently. It was cold. Jace stood, a few steps behind her, silent. He had never seen her like this before. She wasn't just mourning a machine. She was mourning a friend, a partner, a soul. Shadowlight had been more than a ship. It had been alive, built from forgotten tech, bound to a living pilot, shaped by trust and purpose. Now it was gone. The seed had activated, and the cost was clear. She's not coming back, is she? Tessa whispered. Jace slowly shook his head. No, I don't think so. They stayed like that for a long time, saying nothing. They left the tomb in silence. No hyperjump, no music, just slow, steady flight back toward familiar stars. Systems across the galaxy were lighting up. Reports flowed in through weak signals. Dree's voice reached them from Remnant Command. Power restored in 12 sectors. Abandoned. Colonies found reconnected. AI systems stabilized. We're getting reports of life returning. Tessa barely heard the words. Jace handled the responses. She sat quietly in the pilot's chair, flying manually for the first time in a long time. No guidance, no soft voice. Just her. Her hands gripped the wheel tighter. When they returned to Alaris Prime, the sky was bright again. Solar rings glowed. Stations buzzed. Ships moved with purpose, like blood rushing through newly awakened veins. But there was no ceremony for their return. Just a quiet landing, and a solemn walk down the ramp. The crew watched from a distance as Tessa and Jace stepped off Shadowlight for the last time. Drea was waiting. She looked at the ship with a deep, respectful gaze. She's gone, she asked. Tessa nodded. Drea placed a hand over her chest, a quiet salute. Then we owe her everything. They powered Shadowlight down permanently. The ship would remain at the base, preserved, honored, but never flown again. In the weeks that followed, peace began to spread. The chaos left behind by Kale's echo code slowly settled. Systems connected, communications restored. Leaders from across the stars sent messages of hope, unity, and thanks. Tessa refused them all. She didn't want medals or titles. She just wanted silence. Jace stayed close, never pushing her, only reminding her she wasn't alone. Some nights she sat outside their small cabin on Alaris, staring at the stars, watching, listening, hoping, somehow, to hear that soft voice again, but it never came. They opened a new station near the edge of the Remnant. Based a beacon, a place for lost pilots, broken ships, forgotten stories. They called it the Lighthouse. Tessa and Jace took in those who had nowhere to go. Orphans, wanderers, engineers who lost their way during the war. The place became something more than a repair dock. It became home. Children would gather around Jace in the evenings to hear the story. The ship was built from scrap, he would say, smiling. Everyone laughed at it. But it had a secret. What was the secret? The youngest ones would always ask. He'd tap his chest. It had a heart, and the heart woke up. Then they would ask about the captain. Tessa never came out during story time. She couldn't, not yet. One night, long after the children had gone to bed, Tessa stood on the old tower at the edge of the landing field. The stars were clear. The air was still. She closed her eyes. I miss you, she whispered. And for the first time in weeks, a spark, not a sound, just a flicker of warmth across the back of her mind. She opened her eyes. The sky remained unchanged, but her heart felt something, a gentle touch, a quiet breath, like someone saying, I'm still here. Later, as she sat on her bed, a small light blinked on the old console. She stared at it, not daring to move. Then, a voice, soft, faint, familiar. "Hello, Captain." Tessa's eyes filled with tears. She didn't speak, she just smiled. The next morning, the galaxy felt different. Whispers traveled across star routes and space stations. Somewhere, someone had lit a match in the darkness, and that tiny flame had found fuel in forgotten places. Broken ships came back online. Lost travelers were found. Frozen outposts began to send faint signals again. And amid that awakening, people spoke of one ship, a ship made of discarded metal, a ship that should never have flown, a ship that saved them all. Tessa walked through the hangar, where Shadowlight rested. Her steps echoed quietly. No one else was there. The lights were dimmed, and dust floated lazily in the air. It was peaceful. Still, she reached out and ran her hand across the side of the hull. "Hey," she whispered. "I thought maybe ... it was all over. But I felt you, I know it." A low hum tickled her fingers, soft, barely there. She smiled. "You did your part. Rest now." She stayed there for a long time. Just her. And the last ship that ever truly understood her. Later at the lighthouse, she gathered the younger kids under a solar lamp. They looked up at her, eyes wide. She rarely spoke in public, but tonight felt different. "There was a time," she began, "when people believed power came from size, from weapons, from armies." The children leaned closer. "But the most powerful thing I ever saw," she said softly, "was a broken ship ... that chose to love instead of destroy." One of the smaller girls raised her hand. "Was it magic?" "No," Tessa said. "It was choice." Another child asked, "What happened to the ship?" Tessa looked up at the stars through the skylight. She became the stars. She became the light. Weeks turned into months. The galaxy kept rebuilding. Drea was elected to lead the Restoration Council. Jace became the head of the pilot union. They never called themselves heroes. They just kept working. Tessa rarely left the lighthouse. She fixed old ships, taught kids how to listen to the engines. She walked under the stars every night, whispering to the wind on sometimes. Just sometimes, she swore she heard a hum in reply. One day, a young pilot arrived in a rusty pod with no name. He limped into the workshop and dropped a dented helmet on the table. "I heard this place is for lost causes." Tessa raised an eyebrow. "That true?" He grinned. "I heard a story about a junk ship that ruled the galaxy. Thought I'd see if anyone here believed it." Tessa reached under the table, pulled out a silver emblem, and placed it gently in front of him. The symbol of Shadowlight. She smiled. "We believe." That night, far above the lighthouse, a faint shimmer passed through the stars. No one noticed except her. Tessa looked up and whispered one last time, "Thank you." The wind shifted. And for a moment she could have sworn ... The stars blinked back.